So, welcome and thank you for joining us here today. We're really excited to be able to launch this exhibition, You're Not Alone, that we've been working on behind the scenes for some time now. We wanted to have a discussion together to start to highlight a little bit of how this exhibition has come about, how the film particularly came about, and our experiences have been involved in it. So I'm Shirlene Badger. I lead patient advocacy for Illumina. My region is across Europe, Middle East and Africa, and I'm really excited to be here to support Soft UK in the way that they support families with trisomy 13 and 18. Kerry, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Shirlene. I'm Kerry and I'm the founder of Same But Different. I'm a photographer and a filmmaker, and our aim is to use the arts to create greater awareness of rare disease, disability and other people affected by social exclusion. And, you know, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really grateful for the support of Illumina in this project. And it's an absolute pleasure to work with Soft as well.
Thank you, Kerry. And Sharon and Jodie. Sharon, can we start with you? Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Sharon. I live in South Wales, just outside of Neath. I've had 4 children. We've lost little Sophie back in 2004, and also lost my eldest son 6 years ago, 2015. I have Jamie, who's now 30, and I have 2 grandchildren. And I have a 15-year-old daughter who still lives at home with us, and my husband as well.
Great.
Lots of animals. I was a registered nurse until August of last year, and now I don't work anymore. So I'm just enjoying doing what I want to do.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. It's great to have you here, and I'm really grateful for you making the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jodie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Jodie. I live in Surrey with my husband Jamie and our dog Lenny. Margot was our firstborn, our little daughter, and yeah, that's us.
That's
family, yeah.
I love the introductions with children and animals. Kerry and I know both have hens that are very important to us as well, and dogs who may interrupt. The hens hopefully won't interrupt our session this morning, but perhaps the dogs will. So having done introductions, I guess what we want to talk about a little bit is how this film particularly came about, how the project came about. And I know, Sharon and Jodie, you will have heard a little bit about this, but perhaps I can direct that to you, Kerry, and you and I can discuss kind of how it came about working with Soft to produce this. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So one of our previous projects was called Gone Too Soon, and as part of that project I met with different families who had lots of experience or different experiences of children who died before the age of 5 due to rare disease. And 2 of those families in particular were families who had had children that died through Edwards syndrome. And their experiences couldn't have been more different in terms of their care in hospital, but also their care after their child died. And the whole process, it showed that actually the way that you're treated throughout can really have a huge impact on the way that you continue to live your life afterwards. And so it was really important to look at different ways that we could see how people could realize that they're not alone, and how important it is to know that even though every individual experience is completely and utterly individual to that person, that family, that shared experience and knowledge of what has occurred is really important. And I also wanted to find a way of celebrating the life of those that have lived, no matter how long they've been, you know, whether it's that they've died in utero, whether they've died shortly after birth, whether they've died a few years after birth. I thought it was important to celebrate the lives of those that have come before, because it doesn't matter how long they've existed, they've left something very, very precious for the families that have lost their children. And so I started discussions with Shirlene about this project quite some time ago now. I think it was, as with a lot of these projects, you know, people think that they just happen, and quite often there's a lot of discussions very early on and lots of planning as well in the process, and obviously talking to Soft. And then in the lead up to this actual film, I spoke to, I think it was 11 different people who had experienced Edwards or Patau syndrome, and to find out their experiences, so that then that helped me get the picture in my mind as to how we wanted the creative process to work with such a very difficult subject, and something that's accessible as well, I hope, for people who are not going through this but who need to know about Edwards, Patau, but also child loss in general. And it, you know, there's so many different aspects to it that we wanted to explore, and I hope that we do that with this film.
And I think the other thing that I wanted to say about that was, because there were so many conversations with different people, it was really important to consider the very diverse experiences, as you mentioned there, and then to think about, obviously in the film we highlight 3 particular stories, but to think about which stories were chosen was quite important, wasn't it, Kerry, in terms of, you know, it's not to say that the other stories weren't important, but they helped in terms of building that research around what people have experienced and what they've gone through. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and whilst we're only including 3 families in the short film, we do have one-to-one interviews in terms of video interviews, but we also have the written narratives of the people that we spoke to as well, and they're just as important in this whole process, because in terms of coming up with the creative ideas and the stories, and getting a feel for possibly the most, I say the right way, but there's never a right way, but the right way to actually portray this. And because as much as everything in this whole experience is very, very, very difficult for those involved, the one thing that I wanted throughout it was that thread of hope, because I think that's really important, because no matter how dark the days are, you need that feeling of hope to get through, and you need to know that there is something at the end of it, you know, in terms of somewhere else to go. And so the reason we chose the families that we did, and I'm really grateful that Sharon and Jodie are here today, was because we wanted to look at the different aspects to it and show, you know, the different parts to the journey, so to speak, with the fact that they're not alone and there are other people who are experiencing the same thing.
And I think Jodie and Sharon, you've seen the longer film now, and I think you'll probably agree with me. I mean, Kerry is incredibly gifted anyhow at the way that she brings stories together and the way that she tells truth, I think, and I hope that's something that's resonating with you. But having seen the stories too, I think I don't know now whether, having seen the film, it's how it feels to have been a part of it. And I'm wondering, you know, Jodie, do you want to start a little bit with, you know, why did you participate? And
I suppose I've sort of been on my radar. Well, I think that was one of the first charities we were directed to after Margot's diagnosis. And at the time, it was a very sort of old school 1980s website, and it was a little bit scary, a little bit intimidating, you know, and just at that point not knowing what Edwards syndrome was at all, and I almost just completely shelved it just because it was too much to absorb and take on. And it was only after Margot died that I suddenly had this sort of I don't know if there's a sort of interest, but I suppose you're almost looking for answers and what could we have done differently, and you know, all those kind of thoughts that are raging in, you know, those early days and months of grief. And I think by signing up to their website, which was by then a nice, shiny, new, far more approachable, easier to digest website, I think on their newsletter there was a call out from Same But Different about being involved. And at the time I was just feeling I just had lots to say and lots to share, and nowhere to really put it. Yeah, that I think, and it felt a bit strange, a bit this kind of like compulsion to want to talk about it all the time. Yeah, it almost feels quite sort of self-indulgent and strange. But anyway, and then I sort of had this chat with Kerry, and then that's kind of where it progressed. And then we were invited to do the filming, and my introduction to it really.
And I think, I mean, Jodie, you've touched on something there where timings play a big part in an ability to tell the story and the reasons behind telling that story. That, you know, sometimes we need to, or there's other times where it wouldn't have been right to tell the story. And I know Kerry and I have seen that time again, haven't we, in different projects. And Sharon, for you, you know, you telling your story, I think this has a particular timing as well. And I wondered if you could share a little bit about your reasons for participating, if that's okay.
Excuse me. Well, I think when we were diagnosed, Sophie was diagnosed at 20. I was 23 weeks pregnant. I think we were given the details of soft as well at the time. I don't think it had been going that long, because I know Christine Rose and Jenny Robbins were the founders of Soft, and they both had children affected by trisomy 18 and 13. And I can remember Jenny Robbins actually ringing me and speaking to me on the phone. And like Jodie said, when you're searching for answers, when you've just had this diagnosis and your head is, you know, is spinning. And it was really good to be able to speak to her with all her knowledge, and just to get information really, and to sort of clarify some of the things that the doctors had said. I know that was invaluable at the time. I don't think they're involved in Soft anymore. I think they sort of handed it along. I think Jenny's daughter became a doctor, and I know she was involved in Soft for a while. That's how we became involved with Soft. And I remember going to a conference in Scotland. It was just 6 weeks after we lost Sophie. But I just had to speak to other families who had experienced it, because there was no internet. I didn't have internet at the time. It was 17 years ago. And I can remember just going to the library and researching, tears streaming down my face in the middle of a library, because I didn't have internet at home. I couldn't search, I couldn't Google for anything. It just wasn't a thing at the time. But I remember we travelled to Scotland just 6 weeks after. I don't know how we did it, but I just needed to be with other families, you know, at the conference and speak to them. And I pulled away for a while, pulled away for a long, long time actually after. And then with things have moved on, and Facebook, and I can remember it came through on Facebook about this project, and that a family had dropped out, and if we would be interested. So the next thing I knew, I was on the phone to Kerry, without thinking about it really. I thought, I want to do this. It just felt right. And spoke to Kerry, and Kerry said, we'd love you to come back. I think this was on the Wednesday. And we actually travelled up on the Saturday then to North Wales to film. So there wasn't much time to think about it really, but I'm so glad that we did. It's absolutely the right thing for us to do. Because, you know, as I touched briefly, we've lost my son 6 years ago, and I feel a lot of my grieving has been transferred from Sophie, if you like, onto Scott. And it was almost her saying, "What about me, Mum? I need a little bit of attention as well. It was almost like she's calling me back to get, to sort of not that I've forgotten, because I got
No.
but because this huge thing has happened with my son, my grief has shifted.
Yeah.
To think of them both, So yeah, it was like she called us back in and said, "Come on, Mum, you need to think about me a bit more."
Oh, that's so powerful, Sharon. Really powerful. And I think you honoured her incredibly well in this. So
I hope so. Thank you.
no, and I think the thing that I'm hearing too is obviously, one of the important things is the roles of organisations like SOFT, and again that's about timings too, that they support at different points in time, and you come in and out as you need in terms of the support that's offered there. So yeah, thank you. So I think I just want to move on to the actual film, and I think we've talked a little bit, and maybe this will come out some more as well in terms of why this is important to us and why the messages in this we feel are really, really important, and what struck us. And there were two moments. Well, there's so many moments in these films that have hit such a chord with me, and I know Kerry and I have talked about them at length. And you both narrate these moments incredibly powerfully. So, Jodie, if I can, the moment for you is where you talk about not wanting Margot's funeral to be her only celebration, and you describe the party that you had. And, that is something that I just think it resonates so deeply with mothers in terms of this, the dream of, the parties that you'll have for your child, and how you will host them, and who will be there, and what it will look like, and what you did there. And I find that a really powerful moment where you talk about that party and what it was like. And again, so these are two very different moments. So I'm not sure if you'll see the link that I'm making, but Sharon, there's a moment where you do talk about the moment Sophie passes, and you say it was nothing like they said it would be. And those words have struck me again and again and again. And for those of us who have experienced loss, I think there is that thing that actually those moments are nothing like they said it would be. And the two things that I'm trying to get here is this idea of what people say, what information you get out, but then the preparation that you're able to make, or what you're able to choose to do in those moments that people have told you might be such and such. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that, Jodie, in terms of if I can go back to that party, and the preparation, or what you said earlier too about what you could have done differently, what would have helped at different times. Obviously that party was important to you as well. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? I'm not asking a direct question, I just want to probe a little bit more on that.
I think we'd had just so much heaviness and so much sadness, but we had a daughter who was alive, and getting her a sort of hurdle, and I just couldn't bear the thought that the only gathering or occasion was her funeral. And exactly like you say, I had all these thoughts of, parties and, all those things, and also the overwhelmingness of not knowing when she might die, thinking, how's everyone going to meet her? And, but also she was precious, and I didn't really want to share her at the same time. It was like I wanted to shout loudly about her, but I didn't really want anyone to. So it was almost the perfect way to do all of those things together. Everyone meet her all in one go at one time. have this positive, happy celebration where it felt just like a relief, like it just felt, and I hate saying but it just felt normal, like you know, the typical, oh, a new baby, you know, we called it her welcome to the world picnic, and that's exactly what it was. It was just, that's what we wanted to mark that welcome rather than it be all dark and sad and, you know, and then the next thing she's died, you know, it would just, but it was, and I nearly didn't do it. I very nearly didn't do it because it was just, we just got her home, we just got settled, and then the thought of having, you know, a thing to organise just was you know, almost didn't do it. And then, you know, just little things like, oh, what's the weather going to do? And obviously it was COVID and all those, you know, we weren't really meant to do it, but it's the best. And just even the photographs that we've got from it, you know, they're not me sat in a hospital chair with her on my lap, or us all sat round in the front room, you know, it felt like it gave more depth, and it was just a happy occasion. And,
and I think there's just such a lovely message in that too, in terms of saying, you know, do those things, mark those things. So, you know, as we talk to lots of different people about their experiences, you know, for some they don't have live babies, but it's how they mark, you know, and actually honor, and you know what rituals we can do actually as a society to honor these lives that are so important to us. So yeah, thank you, Jodie. And Sharon, that moment, I don't know if you, I don't know if it's an unfair question, but there's something really powerful about the way that you described those, that you took her out, you took lots of photos, and that you went on that holiday, just speaks to me so powerfully. It's such a lovely thing, and that she passed in your arms by the canal, walking there, and how you say then it was nothing like they said it would be. And how much do you think, like, I guess I want to ask from that, you know, because I feel like that's a really empowering message for other people who might be going through this, that actually you can choose to do these things. It doesn't have to be how they might say it is. Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing I think that the message that I wanted to get across is that you have a choice. You don't have to listen to everything that you're told. That you have to do what you feel is best for you and your family at the time. Sometimes the medics, they don't know, and it's really important that you're listened to and you're allowed to make those choices, because we're the ones left dealing with it at the end. We're the ones that have to carry on. The medics will forget about us as soon as we go through the door, but we're the ones that have to carry it. And I think it's really important that we make these memories and make these choices. And that's the one thing I wanted to get across really to people, that you do have a choice. And I did make choices, and for us it turned out the best thing that it could be. If anything can be best, but it turned out to be the best thing for us, and gave us opportunities that we wouldn't have had we listened to the medics. I was quite determined, even though my head was all over the place. I knew what I wanted for Sophie. And I think I'm glad that I'm glad I was strong enough to be able to say to the doctors, well, no, this, I'm not happy with that. This is what I'd like to happen. I'm lucky that they supported me in that.
And Kira, you and I have talked about this a lot too, isn't it? This resonates a lot with some of our conversations in terms of really, for women, for their partners, centralizing this thing of what matters most to you, and you know, feeling like you can make those choices, feeling like you can get as much information as you need and all the information, but that you don't have to go down the route that certain information may be suggested to you by medical doctors, but you take that information so that you can make the decisions and you can prepare. Kerry, do you want to say something about that as well?
I think, you know, this project and the other projects that I've done, that I think the most important thing that comes from it is that partnership, and that partnership approach all the way throughout, and the recognition that parents, families, individuals are armed with enough information so that they can make the right decisions for them at that time and, you know, subsequently. And I think what's important is that whole partnership and respect for each other, respect that the families might want to do something different to what is the norm, you know, an understanding that actually that might be the best approach for them, but arming them with as much information as possible so that the right decision can come to, you know, as a team. And I think what was really lovely, Sharon, was the fact that you'd had that conversation with the hospice. They supported you. They, you know, they informed the authorities that you would be on holiday, and you know, the Sophie might pass away. And you, as much as you were strong to say this is the approach you wanted to take, you were supported in that because it was recognised that, you know, for you as a family it was important. And, you know, the same for you, Jodie. You were able to get at home and to do the party, to celebrate a life and things like, and it's all that partnership working. And I think it's so important. And I think when you have that lack of partnership, that's when things go really badly wrong, not just at the time, but also subsequently. And I think it's really important.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just aware of time and that we don't want to take up too much of people's time so that they can also view the exhibition and really engage with it, and that we can take on any questions and answers later in the session as well. I'm wondering just if we want to go around and maybe one by one say kind of really what was the most important thing about taking part, or we've kind of already touched on it, Sharon, in terms of what you think your key message is, but yeah, what the important thing for you has been about taking part in this, and maybe what you would want other people to hear. So Jodie, can I start with you?
Yeah, I think mainly it's in memory of our children. This was another opportunity to remember Margot and keep that memory alive, but also, you know, it does tie in with that message. You know, you sort of think, I'll do this and maybe nothing will come of it, but if it helps one person, I know that's quite a cliche thing to say, but you sort of think, if one little thing that I say resonates with one person at some time or other in the future when this film is out there, then it's worthwhile.
Thank you, Jodie. And I think, you know, it helps make these things real and important, that actually these moments are real and important, and yeah, we want people to know and honour the children and the experiences we've had. Thanks, Jodie. Sharon.
I'm so sorry, Shirley. I didn't hear what you said. When you were speaking.
So I think as I just wanted to give us one chance to go around and say something, you know, to kind of sum up what's important to us about maybe the message of this project or our own personal participation. And I know you've kind of said that's already what you wanted to come across, that you have choices, but just wanted to give kind of one last opportunity for you to say something about your involvement.
Well, it's, you know, I've done it in Sophie's memory, to honour Sophie's memory, obviously, but like Jodie said, it's to help families that come along after us, and to be there as a resource for them, that they can, you know, if they get anything, if they get any sort of help or guidance from it, then, you know, it's to help the people that follow on after us.
Mm.
There will be people, and if they can look to this and gain something from it, then it's, you know, very, very much worthwhile.
Mm. I think you're right, and I think it's right in terms of just allowing other people to see themselves in the stories as well, and to see, oh, you did that, and then to create their own narratives too in terms of the choices that they might make. Kerry.
Thank you. From my perspective, I think the most important thing is that people realise that they're not alone, that there are different choices they can make at different stages. You know, I mean, one of the things that we haven't talked about today, but I think is important as well, is that knowledge and understanding of what's to come. So, you know, whether you go down the route of having tests early on in pregnancy or not, things like that, you know, the whole project opens up so many discussions. There's the discussions around whether somebody's ended a pregnancy. There's the discussions around the choices of diagnosis and when to get a diagnosis and how to get a diagnosis and what that would bring to it, whether that would bring, I think, I can't remember if it was yourself, Jodie, that said, yeah, it was Jodie, who'd said that a diagnosis can bring clarity and can bring almost like the knowledge that arms you in going forward. So there's all sorts of different things that these conversations bring out. And, you know, and Sharon, when you were talking about the fact that the way Sophie died, it wasn't as you expected. And I think there's just so much information that you're overwhelmed at these difficult times, and I think it's nice to hear from people who've been on that journey. And I hope that in some small way this the short film, but also the exhibition itself and different people's narratives, it brings something to people, whether that is hope or whether that's comfort or whether that's knowledge. I just hope that in some small way this project lives on and gives support to people when they need it. And so I'm incredibly grateful to, you know, Illumina for supporting this project, also to Soft for providing that support in those difficult times, and yourselves for all being there and taking part in projects like this, because it's so important. And I know that on the day, you know, we sat there and chatted and all cried at different points. And, you know, for me, I feel incredibly privileged. And, you know, even whilst editing the films, it still brought so much emotion to me as somebody who's never been through it. And I hope that that will also touch the lives of people who don't know how to deal with helping and supporting people who've gone through this, because it's one of those things that nobody talks about, you know, the loss of a child, the loss of a baby. And so I'm hoping that this project helps people understand that actually it is important to recognise what people are going through in terms of grief, but also the importance of remembering and talking about the children who've died.
Thank you, Kerry, as ever. You always manage to tie everything together really powerfully, and I think that just really resonates for me too. I think in terms of both honouring the children that whose stories are talked about in this film, you know, honouring Margot, honouring Sophie, and remembering them well, but also, you know, a huge thank you to you both, Jodie and Sharon, for being brave enough to share your stories as well, and that your stories may provide landmarks for someone else. And I think certainly what Kerry said, that we definitely see that, you know, we get so much information during pregnancy, so much information about from all angles about what's the right thing to do, how to do things, what tests to take, all those sorts of things. And often, you know, I think what we will see here is that these stories will hopefully help other people to navigate their story as they're going through it as well. And it might just be something that goes, actually, I want to do it that way, or I want to know so I can do this, or I want to know so I can prepare in this way, or so I can make those choices. And I think that's really important if we can send out that message of A, you're not alone, but B, do what matters most to you as well in each of those cases. So, and I'm really struck too by, as we've said, the work that SOF do and the way that, you know, they are there at those different points as well. Sometimes it can feel like that's an overwhelming commitment, but other times it's there when it's needed as well. And so huge thanks to SOFT for initiating this. But also I want to conclude with a huge thanks to Kerry for once again weaving together so beautifully and so sensitively to listening to stories, but being prepared to put them out there as well, so that we can share these narratives, so that we can talk about loss, so that we can grieve together, but also so we can celebrate together. So thank you for your time, everyone, and thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for creating, Kerry. And we look forward to taking any questions and answers as we go forward. And, you know, certainly I think we can invite anyone who sees this to reach out if they want to with particular comments or questions. Thanks very much.